Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. Ms. Blankenship, you made a comment a minute ago and during your testimony with regards to the impact of regulatory authorities coming into the bank. Can you elaborate a little bit more?
Certainly. What we've seen is just because of the past 6 months and the financial meltdown that we're all getting painted with the same brush. And while the big banks got bailed out and were given the TARP money and the primary intent for that was to lend money, but yet what we're hearing from small businesses is that they can't get it. Part of it, this is a double-edged sword because the banks are willing to lend. They have capital to lend. We've heard that here today, and that continues to be true, the community banks. But the examiners are painting us all with one brush. They're painting the small banks the same way they do the too big to fail banks. And so when they come in and say, okay, if you've got commercial real estate, we're going to class, and we've heard stories like this, we're going to classify it across the board. Well, even if you're using an SBA program for our reporting purposes, that has to be reported as commercial real estate. And if you have a regional office, regardless of what the mandate is from Washington, sometimes the examiners in the field don't always carry the same operating procedures and practices as we hear out of the head offices in Washington. So it can make banks hesitant to make those types of loans because at a time like this, we can't afford for, perhaps you're a well-capitalized bank, and then if you have certain classifications, your ratings go down and you fall into adequately capitalized, then your FDIC assessment goes up, and all our cost, there's a tremendous amount of cost being levied on the small banks right now.
You're a great witness. You answered the question perfectly. I don't have to do any more leading questions with you.
May I add something? I'm sorry. Excuse me.
Yes, you're next, sir.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Cynthia obviously is right about the regulatory environment. Examinations have never been tougher, and I have found myself on many occasions really working hard to defend in front of regulators good customers of the bank, good borrowers, performing loans, where they, maybe there's a shortfall from a collateral standpoint, but again, that's a secondary source of repayment. The primary source of repayment being their business and their income that they're generating, how they're stepping up to support their businesses. And so it takes a few days to get over an examination, literally, to get back into being upbeat about lending into your community. That's what we all want to do. That's what we're paid to do as a community bank. It's our duty to do that, but you almost have to really regroup after an examination.
It's been my experience in dealing with the banking community in my district and my state that there seems to be a disconnect from Washington and the local regulators. Is that what you're seeing? In other words, Washington says we haven't changed our criteria, we haven't changed our examination procedures or our the way we look at stuff, and yet when you have the examiners come in, it's a whole different world with the way they come in, and they, again, paint you with a broad brush, as Ms. Blankenship said.
It's very true.
That's correct.
One of the questions that I want to have for you two again as well, with regards to the TARP funds, either one of your two institutions take any of those?
No.
No. I did not.
Okay. One of the questions have been posed to me with regards to the TARP funds is initially they were supposed to be for the banks that were in trouble, financial institutions that were in trouble. And as I've seen the funds dispersed, it seems like it's gone to more and more institutions that are not in trouble. And in fact, I've found that some of the banks were asked to take the money so they go out and buy other banks rather than actually absorb weak assets. Have you seen or heard of instances like that, or are you aware that we have an opportunity maybe to help a weak bank with the TARP funds that we haven't taken advantage of?
As I understand from Treasury Secretary Geithner was present at one of our meetings several weeks ago, and he indicated that there would be an initiative for some of the perhaps returned TARP funds to go to some of the banks that had applied and perhaps had missed the deadline or did not qualify the first time around. I think just from my experience, I'm hearing that a lot of smaller community banks have opted not necessarily to use that program because of the regulatory burden associated with it, and typically those banks are well capitalized. We didn't use it. We would have considered possibly using it, and I think there's some opportunity for an additional program perhaps that would fund M&A activity of, say, a strong community bank to acquire a weak or a failing community bank with the assistance. But I don't know that under the current program a lot of banks would be willing to accept the terms associated with that. But I think you could take those TARP funds and perhaps look at another initiative if you wanted to look at the M&A.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Ms. Bean.